Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show, and it is October. That means it is the Octoberthon to celebrate the month of Halloween. The holiday, not the movie. We have been doing a bunch of extra episodes, and of course, something that we started a few years ago was working our way through the Halloween franchise in the months of October. And, you know, last year we did these, I think we did like 6 H2O and Resurrection. The year before that we did 2, 3, 4, 5. We actually did the original and a really, really bad episode the year before that. Which is why, to sort of cap off, because the last couple of Sundays we did Halloween Remake, we did Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie. This week we're doing the original Halloween once more, with a bit more maturity and experience behind us. Obviously in time for next week, where we'll be talking about Halloween 2018, which of course we're excited about seeing how it works out. So, we'll start... Honestly, full spoilers. I was going to say we start spoiler free, but it's Halloween at this point. Like, yeah. just be warned. Halloween, full spoilers. Yeah. But yeah, so this is the classic film by John Carpenter. Came out in 1978. At the time, it was the most successful independent film ever made. And it's simple. It is about Michael Myers, who kills his big sister when he's a kid. He goes to a psychiatric hospital. He breaks out 15 years later. And he comes back. It's the night he came home, and of course, if you're unaware, everyone just calls him Michael Myers. But in the script for the original, and even in the credits, he is credited as the Shape, not Michael Myers when he's the killer. Obviously, the little kid's Michael Myers. When his mask is off towards the end, it's a different actor playing him. That's Michael Myers. But when he's got the mask on, he's the Shape. Tim.
Yeah.
Normally I start these by saying, do you like the movie? But I feel like that's a bit pointless in this case because it's Halloween.
Sure.
But go on, tell me how much you like Halloween.
Oh yeah, no, I like it a lot. I think I mentioned this before, but it wasn't really my franchise growing up. Like, I think last year, or the last couple of years, like when we're doing some of the sequels, some of them like had been, the first time I had seen them. I think that was the case with like 5 and 6. But the first one, I don't know exactly when I saw it, but yeah, that was one that, it's I don't know, it's just hard to deny like how good it is. It's yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? Hey, it's pretty great. Obviously, I know like you're like a huge fan, so I won't try to say that I love it as much as you or anything, but I mean, this is just a phenomenal bit of horror filmmaking, and it's one that you like. I feel like it's one that you can cite a lot when other people get movies wrong. Like it's kind of like it's a classic go-to, like, if you're watching a modern movie and you're like, no, like, you don't understand, like, this isn't scary, like, look at Halloween, look how they build the tension and the creepiness, and like, that's how you do it. Like, it's just like a master class in just really getting like just having like making people feel like the tension and the creepiness, but without being really flashy and in your face, and like feeling the need to overly explain and all this stuff. And
and
it's just
also
every bit of it's
also the movie that sort of proved, hey, you can make a really effective and great horror film on a really low budget. And that's what led to the slasher boom. That's why we have Friday the 13th. That's why we have Nightmare on Elm Street. That's why we have The Prowler. It's why we have picking up Terror Train. It's why we have Prom Night. It's why we have, you can list hundreds of movies that only exist because Halloween made a fortune for the time period. And it's kind of the prototype for a lot of movies, especially slasher movies in particular. And it's funny because it's not like, as much as the rules are clearly established in this movie, it doesn't treat them as rules, it doesn't treat them as tropes. It's just because everyone followed the template of Halloween. We end up feeling like, well, the Be Right Back, the babysitters, the virgin's the one who lives, and so on. Like, all these things, the idea of the final girl, all these things that kind of came from Halloween, but it's only the other movies that made them tropes. This one just made a movie and just did what made sense for the story.
Yeah, it's funny though, like how yeah, it's something that hadn't really been done before. Although, don't sometimes people argue that Black Christmas was like the first slasher?
Oh yeah, I mean when I say when I bring this up, I don't necessarily mean that it's unequivocally the first slasher movie, because I think Black Christmas is arguably kind of a slasher movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is arguably kind of a slasher movie.
This is what made it popular though, like kind of what paved the way for like,
yeah, and this is. And I would argue that those two, well, there's definitely elements of the slasher movie in there. They're not exactly slasher movies in the sense that, you have a body count, you get down to your final girl, they're running around. Texas Chainsaw kind of has that, but Texas Chainsaw, like, you get to that point where the rest of the cast are dead and it's just the final girl. You get to that point, like, 40 minutes before the end of the movie. Like, yeah, so there's some differences there. And then Black Christmas is a little bit different because it's got some of the murder mystery stuff in there, and it's got the creepy phone calls, which are a little bit different, and so there's definitely stepping stones. It's not like Halloween just jumped to it, and obviously there's inspiration from Psycho, which Psycho was the movie that brought horror into the everyday mainstream world, like mainstream in the sense that before Psycho, horror movies were in castles in Transylvania. They were in the past. They were in. Whereas this was like, no, this is a modern motel. This is people who have working jobs in present day life who are, stalked and killed by this crazy person. That's what Psycho did. And then Halloween here kind of takes it. And the fact that, of course, we have Jamie Lee Curtis, who's the daughter of Janet Leigh, is just, icing on the cake. And then even Loomis is named after a character in Psycho, and then there's a bunch of other characters named of. One of the things I did actually, I was watching the Blu-ray this time, which I've done the last like 50 times I've watched it. I've been the Blu-ray, but there's like a trivia track, like it's like pop-up facts, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll put them on. Why not? I've seen it like 100 million times. I'll put the trivia on. To be honest, 99% of them were completely pointless and stuff that I knew already or extremely obvious. There was just one or two little things here or there that were kind of, okay, that's kind of interesting. This character's kind of named off this character, or named off of John Carpenter's best friend in high school, or whatever. Like there was a few things here or there. Although one which really made me laugh and was just there for me to do this now is that the camera operator for the Steadicam went on to be a director of photography on the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Stars Blu-ray. So
yeah, but it's crazy though, like how you can kind of say that like it is like the first of its type of that we would see over and over again, but it feels so fully formed, like when I feel like a lot of times like we talk about like other franchises like like especially like Friday the 13th and stuff. When you watch the first one, it's like this doesn't really feel like Friday the 13th or like what it became to know and love.
Yeah, it became what we know it as it went on.
Yeah, well, like with this, it's just fully everything's just fully formed. It's like, oh no, like this is absolutely like what it should be.
Yeah,
it doesn't really feel like there's anything that's like sometimes even if a movie's really good, there might be like a little part where you're like, oh, this is kind of a weird thing. Like there really isn't anything like that I'm like, oh, this isn't needed or out of place. Or
everything after this was just trying to live up to it. Is basically that. Unless you're Rob Zombie, in which case you're trying to just rip it apart and piss all over its legacy. And of course, naturally, there's going to be some comparisons to the remake, especially since we just watched Rob Zombie's two films over the past couple of weeks, and watching this and like comparing the opening Laurie scene, for example, to the opening Laurie scene in the remake, which is Laurie finger banging a bagel to make her mother uncomfortable, as opposed to this where it's just a quiet scene of her coming out of the house and seeing that she's kind of responsible and her dad trusts her with things. Like it's like, okay, instantly I get a part of this character. She is the responsible one.
Yeah, she's a million times more likable. And then even with her and her friends, like they still talk about like there's still like sex talk and that kind of thing. I mean, it's not.
Most of the dialogue is about planning for their sex that night. At least the other characters, the other two characters, Linda and Annie. So
yeah, but it feels so more like. It feels like more real and natural, and it's not like gross and like shocking like the Rob Zombie is, where it's just like
it's not obnoxious.
Jesus.
They're not humping each other's legs and talking about what they're going to do that night. It's all very implied. It's all very like again, but a bit more natural in that sense. What's funny actually is that the pop-up facts mentioned that the actress playing Annie whose name's actually Loomis, funnily enough, was actually 28 at the time of filming this. So it's like,
oh wow,
yeah, we often joke about how they always have older actors, but 28 is really pushing it. Like, all right. I mean, hell, I'm 29, and like I ain't passing for no teenager.
Yeah, like I mean, I assume that they were all like a little older, but yeah, I wouldn't have thought they were that old.
Yeah. No, I think Laurie's one of the big things you look at. I think obviously we'll talk about Michael Myers, we'll talk about Loomis and The Shape and all that, but I think Laurie's such an important character in this movie, and where she succeeds where a lot of other final girls fail, although a lot of them are quite likeable enough, but they're kind of there to just function as a sort of mindless slasher movie. And I love a good mindless slasher movie, but Halloween sets itself apart in a lot of ways, and one of them is that Laurie is like, there's actual observations to make about the character and what the character's arc is and what she's saying. And I think it's notable that early on, like, one of the things that people have always said is, no, she doesn't survive because she's the virgin or because she's the prude or whatever. She survives because she's not distracted by everything else, and she's actually paying attention. Early on in the film, she gets a glimpse of The Shape in the distance in the car. She sees him, behind the hedge, in the clothesline, and she's concerned and she's scared, and she crawls onto the bed and like almost get into a fetal position where she's kind of terrified, and no one believes her. No one believes that there's actually danger coming, but she kind of senses it. And here's something I noticed in this watch through. Later on, when she's babysitting Tommy and Lindsay, she's babysitting the kids, and Tommy's asking her about the boogeyman, and she kind of just fobs him off. And then later on, when he gets scared because he sees The Shape across the street, and he starts screaming, "It's the boogeyman!" and Lindsay gets really scared, and Laurie grabs her, "Hey, you're scaring Lindsay! Stop it! There's no boogeyman! Stop it!" That is like the one big mistake she makes, is she treats him like that her friends treat her. And she doesn't believe him that the danger's actually coming, and that's the biggest that's the biggest mistake she makes in this movie. But she's still far more aware than the other characters are. She's actually trepidatious. She is worried that danger is approaching in certain scenes, and it's almost her friends talking her out of it that puts her in the most danger. And like I thought that was a really interesting observation, is that she disregards Tommy the same way her friends disregarded her, and ultimately the danger was very real. The boogeyman was there, and he was coming.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting touch.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I never really picked up on it, but yeah. Going back to like what you're saying, like, she's the only one that is actually taking anything seriously. Like you see everyone else, when she thinks that she sees something, they kind of like call them out, or like almost like make fun of them and stuff, and they all kind of
I mean, like, more specifically, she's worried that there's someone dangerous, and they start making jokes. They start saying, "Hey, maybe I can date you. Oh, you've scared another one away, Laurie." All these little jokes. They always, again, it's funny because we complained that the Rob Zombie movies, they're always talking about sex, and in a weird way the characters in this are kind of doing that as well. Like I say, it's a lot more natural and a lot less obnoxious, and the way it works here though is that when Laurie tries to point out an actual potential threat or danger or something they should be concerned with, they're too busy. "Oh no, we've got sex tonight. We don't want to talk about that. Yeah. We're self-obsessed with our own lives, and this is the thing we want to do." They're ignoring everything they're supposed to actually pay attention to. I mean, there's almost a complete monologue. And Kat, you're almost moving my speaker off my desk. I'm going to move you. Come here. Right, there's a monologue from PJ Souls from Linda at one point where Laurie says, "Oh, I forgot my books," when they're walking home, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot my book too. I always forget my books. I forget my math book, my history book. I mean, who needs books? I don't need my books. I mean, who looks at the books anyway?" It's this like 30 seconds solid of just her saying why she doesn't care about leaving her books behind, and I'm like, maybe if you paid attention a little bit more, you wouldn't get killed later on. I'm just saying,
but like I feel like you really don't see that much from the friends, but they're still like so memorable. Like you just even from the little interactions you get, you totally get their and it's funny I just said totally because we were talking about Linda, but like you get so much of their personality just from those little interactions, and but it just is like goes to show you though like how well like the storytelling and like the dialogue is done, that these feel like real characters and you get involved in what happens to them.
It's efficient. Whereas Rob Zombie's movie, they have to constantly scream what they're thinking to try and like let us know who they are. Whereas with this, you get it. It's much more subtle.
yeah, they actually sound like characters as opposed to just voices for Rob Zombie. Like it just feels like really, I actually would have had more respect if Rob Zombie just played all the characters in the movie, because it just feels like everyone is just like saying what he's thinking.
It would definitely be more of an absurd art film, because it's just all Rob Zombie with the beard. It's like he's playing Laurie, and he's playing Annie, and he's playing the Michael Myers. He's playing everyone.
What scenes I actually really like is I like you get like a lot of real vulnerability with Jamie Lee here, and I like the scenes when she's talking about Ben Tramer, and like you just get like.
Do you know what? I was going to bring up this same scene when Annie brings it up in the car. Or she brings up Ben Tramer, but then there's that awkward moment afterwards where she looks mortified, like she's so embarrassed that she's even bringing this up.
Yeah, and like it feels like even when she first mentions it, like it's not like she's like, well, I do have a crush. It's this person. Like, she kind of like says it like almost like under her breath, and then of course and I feel like a lot of people can relate here. You have the best friend where you say something and like, oh really, that's what you like? All right, man, I'm gonna set it up, and like you get horrified. You're like, no, don't. And I just love like that little bit of her personality where you really feel for her, and like you can totally get into her head, like the kind of person she is, and
she's a character.
Feelings she's had.
You immediately get who she is. Like, I mean, you get her before that, but that's really like sets it up, and then you can say, is there some kind of like almost dichotomy here of like she is horrified by this, but there's really much worse things to be scared of coming up later on, and it kind of shows you how trivial this really is in the grand scheme of things. But the other girls are so obsessed, and that's their entire world. That's all they're thinking about. That's all they're focusing on is their relationships, and can we sneak the kid out so that we can have sex whilst Laurie's looking after them, and so on and so forth. Like, can we manipulate it to get away with all this? And then the other thing with Laurie is just that this thing that I've talked about this before is the idea of her as the protector of the kids, and that's part of why you root for her, is because it's not just that she's trying to save herself, is that the entire time, like as soon as she's babysitting Tommy, we see that he's bullied, we see that Michael's around later on, and he sees the boogeyman. She's a protector for both him and Lindsay, and she does protect them. She makes sure they're safe. She when she's sitting talking about the comic books and stuff, she tries to understand them. And obviously, like I said, the biggest mistake she makes is not listening to him at one point. But it's not just about her saving her own ass. It's about her protecting other people, which is something the other characters again don't pay attention to. And that's why you root for her, because she is the mother figure. She's the one who actually cares. So she's very likable, as opposed to that atrocity in the remake who won't stop squealing and complaining at every turn of the events.
And I feel like maybe this and the original Nightmare are kind of unique, where I feel like the final girl is almost as memorable as, or if not, just as much memorable as like the villain. Like, I feel like a lot of the Friday the 13th, it's really, obviously except for like the first one and stuff, like it's Jason's show. Like, not as many people remember the characters and stuff as this. But yeah, I feel like this is
except Shelley.
You remember
Shelley never dies.
Yeah, well, of course, how can you forget Shelley? But yeah, I mean, I feel like not most horror movies you remember the villain, but this one, Laurie is pretty much just as memorable as Michael Myers in this. And even like later on the sequels, I feel like there are characters that you definitely like, but you don't get the same kind of gravitas as Laurie in this one.
I think all the Halloween movies I like all have pretty decent protagonists when I think about it. Like, compared to other franchises, it's one thing that I think the series is well, at least when it's good, it does quite well. And obviously no better than here in the original. So I'll be really curious to see what the new one does in this sense. But now Laurie is it's got a lot more depth to her than most final girls do, and it's so subtle. It's just a few key ideas that kind of build her character, and it makes her likable. And you root for her. You're rooting for her to survive.
Yeah.
So that's good. It's good. So Loomis, let's talk about Loomis. We'll save the Shaped as the third pillar of the characters, but Loomis is obviously Donald Pleasence. Famously, this role was turned down by Christopher Lee, who later admitted it was the biggest mistake he'd ever made in his career. which is funny. Apparently, he also offered it to Peter Cushing as well. So he tried both the Hammer dudes, okay. And both of them turned it down.
Interesting. I can see. Yeah, I think they both would have been good, but man, it's hard to picture. Anyone other than Donald Pleasence. He really makes the character his own.
Yeah, I remember. This wasn't from the facts. This was just from like the old documentary and commentary stuff. I remember Pleasence took the role because his daughter was a fan of Assault on Precinct 13.
Okay.
And what I did learn from these pop-up facts, though, is that he only worked on the film for 5 days. He had 5 days. I mean, the film was shot in 21 days. I remembered that, but he was on 5 of those days, and he was paid $20,000 for his 5 days of work.
Oh, wow.
And I have no doubt he was paid the most out of anyone, because he's the veteran actor. He's the... Because he had been in big movies before this. He was in a James Bond movie. He was in Fantastic Voyage. He was in World War II movies. He's a career. Whereas everyone else is basically everyone else involved in the movie is basically all these like fresh out of like film school, like really young and like hungry and like want to get stuff done. And
yeah, I mean, he really grew to like love the character though. Unfortunately, he ended up passing after the sixth one.
Before it even came out, actually.
Okay. Oh yeah. But I think at some point though he said that like he would keep doing these movies like as long as they kept making them.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that if you'd went back to 1978 when they were shooting this and said, "Hey, this is the role you'll be remembered for most," it'd have been like, "Mark, shut up." This little horror movie with these guys who are throwing like leaves around because it's spring in Florida, or not Florida, Pasadena. I think it was Pasadena. It was California. I think
that's
it was.
Where they've.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is Pasadena.
Was it Pasadena? Yeah. But like they have to throw leaves around because obviously it was spring, and also there's palm trees in the background if you're looking for them, just to like break the illusion. But
and I love like he serves this really interesting role where I feel like a lot in horror movies when you have like this villain, there's always someone that is telling you the backstory, why you should be afraid or what the rules of this creature are, whether it's like someone at a campfire or a psychic that comes into like a haunted house or something like that. And I like that he's almost like the storyteller that has to go warn people around, but it's not like he's just telling a group of people. He's kind of like running all over the place, like talking to anyone that will listen, like kind of like this harbinger of doom, like the old man in Friday the 13th or something. But
that feels like a disservice to compare him to that. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
But he has that role where he's like he's the he has to warn people about what's coming. He's
the hype man. He's there to help build up the threat of Myers. And it's funny actually thinking about it now. You may not get this as much because you've never really been into wrestling, but he's kind of like Paul Heyman to Michael Myers, Brock Lesnar. He's the advocate. He's the one who's there to sell even though he's against him, he's there to sell the threat of the villain. And I think he does. I mean, obviously everyone remembers that speech that he gives to the sheriff in the house, where he's I looked into that boy's eyes and all I saw was pure evil, and he stared out beyond the wall and all that stuff. Like, it's all great stuff. And he gives the movie this gravitas because he's this this older actor who is experienced, and actually I love one of my favorite stories about Donald Pleasence in this movie is at the ending after he shoots Michael off the balcony. John Carpenter said in the commentary track that he was given a choice by Donald Pleasence for that moment, and he says, "Do you want me to react to this as if I knew he was going to be gone, or if I'm surprised that he's gone? When he looks down over and he's not there." And Carpenter said, "Oh, give me both. We'll do both takes and give me both, and I'll pick later on." And he's like, "You can tell which one I picked." He didn't, he never said on the commentary, but you can tell he knew. Loomis knew that he was going to be gone when he looked over that balcony.
Yeah.
And I always liked that. I liked that he gave him that choice. Like the idea that Carpenter never even thought of that, like how he was going to react when he looked over. He just in the script it might have been he looks over and sees he's not there. Dun dun dun. Like.
Yeah.
But he adds that extra element to it.
Yeah. I don't know. He's really great, and it's just a nice like I guess like similar to Laurie, where he where she like is kind of like constantly on the lookout and like kind of worried about what might be going on. He's like this person who is, very worried, but he actually knows like, what could potentially be happening. But then, like we said, like other characters in the movies, like, they're not taking everything seriously. Like, same thing, like when he talks to people, like no one's like, completely really, people listen to him, but they're not like fully taking in the gravity of the situation. Like,
yeah, I mean, you could almost say that if Laurie's the more grown up of the kids, Loomis is just the outright grown up. He's the one who's already been through it all.
Yeah.
But if you want to, I mean, that's a bit of a stretch, but I mean, I think that's kind of there if you want to look at it that way. But yeah. No, he's great. I love the moment where he first talks to the sheriff after the store robbery, and you see Michael in the car drive past behind him.
Oh yeah.
That's a great moment. I love his delivery of was that the boogeyman? As a matter of fact, it was. He's just he adds so much weight to everything that Loomis says, because Loomis could be a really hokey character in the hands of another actor, and I feel like he gives it so much weight, and it's one of those things where, like, the movie would still be great if Loomis was kind of shit, but it wouldn't be in the masterclass status that it is, I think, if you didn't have these three elements. You have Michael, you have Loomis, you have Laurie, and then of course you have the filmmaking that makes it all sing. But yeah.
And then I would add, I'm sure we'll go into more, in depth of it later, but I think the music plays a key part in that as well. Like, I mean, everything about it, all together. But I mean, I guess you can lump that in with the filmmaking. But
I mean, the music is iconic. Like so many horror movies these days have such forgettable soundtracks where I don't remember any of the themes. I don't remember anything. I can sit and like. I can hum multiple cues from Halloween, not just the main theme. I can hum multiple cues. Like the one that always springs to mind is when Laurie starts. The chase starts after he's finally appeared to Laurie, and it's like dun, 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 dun. Like you can do all these little moments. Like they're all very memorable because they work so well, and they're very simple. I think that's part of what makes it work so well. Is they're so simplistic in what they do, and simple can be really effective. And I think that's the case here.
And then not just with the music, but like the movie in general, where you don't need these big giant jump scares with loud stings. Like you could just have, sometimes it's just scarier to have some guy in the background just watching that you might not even notice at first.
Yeah, which leads us nicely into Michael, into the shape. He like. Obviously, you have the POV shot at the start, which is it appears as all one take. It's actually a couple of takes, because apparently the reason why they had to do one of the cuts was because the reel of film ran out during the good take, so they had to have a. I know one of the cuts is when he puts on the mask. That's when one of the cuts are snuck in, but I think there's another one as well, at least. But yeah, so you got Michael, and the idea that, again, I said this a lot in the remake discussion about why it's bad compared to the original, so I'm just going to kind of retroactively say it for this, which is there is no reason for why Michael's the way he is, right? That's why he's so scary. He's got this typical perfect home life, white picket fence, everything seems fine, and then one day he just starts killing. And then he's in the asylum, and Loomis, as he says, for 8 years he tried to bring him back, and then for the last 7 he's been just trying to keep him locked up because he realised that he was just pure evil and there was nothing he could do to change him. The idea that there is no explanation, even when he takes his mask off, when his mask is taken off near the end, he looks like a relatively normal dude. But there's no, hulking behemoth, big grisly face or anything like that. He looks like a sort of normal guy who just looks a little bit cross-eyed, and that's all it is. Yeah. That's why he's scary. And then, of course, as the shape, as the killer, he is just this ever-present thing in the background. He is this, off in the distance, or behind the window, or just standing there staring. I love the head tilt after he kills Linda's boyfriend. The head tilt as he looks at him up in the knife.
Yeah, it really feels like he becomes like a different character. Yeah, once he has this like kind of costume on, and like because I love the opening scene with where he escapes like in the rain, and you don't really see like full glimpses of him, but I just love kind of seeing him like scramble like all over the car, and it feels like a little more frantic than you see him later on, where he feels very passive and stoic and stuff. And
very, very erratic. I like that as well. I like the build before that, and I love the idea of that they're not supposed to wander around like that. And it's all these other patients, and it's like, oh, there's been a breakout of some kind, and Loomis gets worried immediately. That really sells that quite a bit. Of course, that nurse comes back in H2O. She's in the opening scene of H2O. They brought her back. She's in the second movie as well, actually. But yeah, I love all those moments. One of my favourite shots of the whole movie is when he's carrying Annie's body. So it's when Tommy's looking across the street and you just see him like carrying Annie's body, and he's just a silhouette, and he's just walking, and it's so I don't want to quite say robotic, but just rigid and matter of fact.
It doesn't look like they're not doing anything crazy, but at the same time something's wrong. Like, that's not the way like a normal person would be walking around.
Yeah, it's one of the things that in the remake is in this original film, you get the idea that he feels really close to wearing a mask, and he wants to wear a mask. He doesn't like his face, right? And you get that from two scenes. You get that from the opening where he puts on a mask to kill, and then towards the end, obviously all in the fact that he stole a mask to wear, obviously we get that information, but at the end of the movie when his mask is ripped off, he stops caring about attacking Laurie, and he looks at his mask and he's like, I need to put this back on, and he puts it immediately back on. That's all you get, and it tells you how he feels about, like, I want my face back on. Give him, Rorschach almost from Watchmen, give me back my face. Like, it's that kind of quick moment. And the remake has him like be obsessed with masks, and he's making dozens and dozens of masks, and he's got them all over his walls, and it's just super obnoxious. Just like the characters, instead of just having them be there and having the writing be confident. Again, it's being economical with your writing, is you have just one line of dialogue or one little action tell you something about the character. Instead, Rob Zombie's movie, it's yelling at you over and over again.
There's no subtlety at all, and it's especially weird with that movie where it's like, we already have a movie where this is like all established in a very effective way. Like, why are you trying to explain something that we already get?
Like, effectively, I'd say
it's so not needed.
Succinct, maybe a good word to describe how it establishes all the characters and how the shape works, how Michael works. But of course, there's a lot of mystery there, and I think the mystery, like the unknowing of why he is the way he is, of how he's going to operate, is part of the magic of the fear of the shape and Michael Myers, and why he's an interesting character. And that's good. And keep in mind, the whole Laurie's his sister thing is not in this movie. That was a Halloween 2 edition. It is not part of this, and given the new movies ignoring it, it's just not canon now. So
and I don't really mind that wrinkle that much. Like, I know some people absolutely hate it. It doesn't bother me that much. I don't. When I watch this movie, I really don't think about it though.
Yeah, I don't think about it. I don't completely hate it. It doesn't like ruin 2. I mean, I like 2 well enough. I like 4, which also ties into the whole, he has to hunt down his family members. The problem with that is that, I mean, maybe in 2 they tell us, but what about his parents? Like, what? I mean, they didn't die. They're fine. They're somewhere. Like, in fact, talking about comparing it to scenes in the remake, another scene that was really sticking out to me in this watch was when Loomis has been with the gravedigger, and they're at the cemetery. And remember in the remake how the gravedigger just started swearing? He dropped like 10 F-bombs when he saw that the grave was empty, or the tombstone was gone. And then in this, like, he's just like, oh, what's happened here? Oh dear. Like, the scene actually plays where he's got a story that he wants to tell Loomis, and Loomis is like, no, I'm more concerned with the grave here. Let's see what's happening. And then of course he says he came home, and I'm like, oh, that's like the poster. And he came home. Yes. Do it.
I mean, again, it's just more effective because it makes them seem like real characters, while it's like, Rob Zombie's stuff, like, the caretaker in the zombie version feels like a guy in a horror movie. It's like, oh, of course he's acting like that because he knows he's in a horror movie. Like in Carpenter, it's like, oh no, everyone just feels like real people.
Yeah,
like,
and that's why having the horrific Michael Myers start killing people feels like it's a complete invasion of their lives. As the sheriff points out, this is a small community. This is families. This is children lined up in streets. He's telling me they're lined up for a slaughter. It's the fact that this evil's come into an otherwise not, just like Michael Myers, like, he's this evil for no reason in the nice house with a white picket fence. Same thing with the town. It's a nice town full of families. normal enough people who feel fairly realistic. In Rob Zombie's movies, everyone is a constant swearing, borderline rapist, borderline paedophile. Everyone is grisly. They're all awful people. So when they start getting killed, it's like, I don't care. I don't give a shit. No. Yeah. They deserve it. It's fine.
Well, I think we mentioned it in that review where like it oddly makes like Michael Myers kind of like the hero in a weird way. Which is like something you never got in this movie.
Yeah,
and like I get sometimes
Jason sometimes feels like you want to root for Jason in some of the sequels, and that's okay.
Yeah, but I feel like there's, like, yeah, you're rooting because you want to see the kills and stuff, but yeah, it never really feels like he's like, oh man, like this guy's cool or something. Like, he, like, people deserve what they're getting. Like, that's what it feels like in zombies movies. Like, it's like, nah, man, like, the world's cruel and people are evil. And, like, Michael Myers is taking them out or something. It's like, what? This is weird.
No, that's good. Oh, and we should talk about some of the small references and stuff, like watching The Thing on TV, which, of course, Carpenter went on to actually make his own remake. And I think what's funny about that is that the movie's so different, but one of the things that actually stayed pretty much the same was the logo. The actual text of The Thing was pretty much the same. Like, they actually kept almost the same thing. So no, I like that. I like that Annie is so obsessed with like relationships and everything's about people dating that she references that when the dog gets killed by Myers and she thinks, oh, he's quiet, she says he must have found a hot date, and then later on she basically like tries to get Lindsay out of her hair by saying, hey, do you want to go watch TV with Tommy Doyle? Like, it's like, hey, you're too young to have a crush on a boy. You go and hang out with a boy, have your own little date for tonight. Like everything about it is kind of there. And again, the fact that little Lindsay was like, yeah, I want to hang out with Tommy, the fact that she cared about that and Tommy didn't, but he was the one noticing the boogeyman when she was like, no, I just want to watch TV. Like, again, it's like the idea of some people are paying attention to their surroundings and some people are just obsessed with what their want is, what their need is. Again,
it just gives nice character quirks. And like, I like all the stuff with Lindsay where like, she's just like, constantly obsessed with just watching the TV. She's like, ignoring the phone, ignoring, Annie when she's like screaming for her, and like all that stuff is just like nice little like character touches.
Yeah, the movie's if the movie has a message, it's basically just pay attention. Just be a little bit vigilant about yourself, and maybe you'll survive. Maybe you can survive this.
Even with with Linda when she's she thinks that's her boyfriend under the sheet. It's like maybe like maybe try to be a little more aware. Like, is this something your boyfriend would normally do, or maybe something not right here? I can't talk about Halloween without commenting that the boyfriend of the sister Judith at the start is the quickest finisher of sex in the history of human history. Because this is the thing. Like, Michael comes in the house, he gets a knife, he comes round to the front and he's coming down the stairs and he's like halfway through putting on his shirt, which tells me they didn't even get their clothes off, it tells me that they didn't keep their clothes on having sex either. They stripped down, had sex, and he's already pretty much fully dressed on his way down the stairs by the time Michael comes round. This entire process couldn't have taken longer than 30 seconds. Yeah, well, you'd be surprised at sometimes how it goes.
Tim's sympathising a little bit too much with this. That's all I'm saying. He's sympathising with it. But yeah. Also, apparently Judith was played by a Playboy playmate from 1974.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a bit of trivia that I learned watching the trivia facts this time. But yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of the the actual death scenes we have in here?
Yeah.
Let me ask you that.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. Let me ask you this: do you have like a favorite or one that sticks out to you the most?
It's funny. I think with Halloween, like, I think the build up and the quiet moments with Michael are the ones that I love more. But if we're talking about the actual deaths, I mean, it's hard not to love the stab up in the door when he's hanging there and with the head tilt. It's hard not to appreciate that one. Obviously Linda's is pretty good on the phone, because the sheet slowly comes off, and then the idea that he picks up the phone after and It's the first time that I mean, it's not the first time we've seen Laurie, but it's like the first time there's like more contact between them is when he's got the phone up and she just hears the breathing, and it's very very creepy. So my favorite moments, like I say, the walk in front of the house. I love anything with him in the background or down the end of the street. One of my favorite moments, though, possibly my favorite moment of the whole thing, might be after Laurie's discovered the bodies and she's just like backed into a corner and there's just that dark closet behind her, and then the white mask, the face just slowly appears in the background. I love that moment. I love it so much.
In general, I think maybe one of my favorite like most tense scenes is when she's like locked herself in the closet and he just breaks through and it's trying to reach at her. Who is it that gets killed in the car?
That's Annie. She gets strangled.
That's Annie. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know why on this viewing for some reason that scene just stuck out to me. I think maybe it's just like, sometimes you feel like you're in the car, you're kind of safe, you can get away, but just like and it's just like really like brutal. It's just like,
and it uses and again talking about using the filmmaking to make it more effective. It uses the horn as almost a kill, like a kill. What do I call this? Like a, there's like an alarm to say someone's dead. It uses it as that, but everyone ignores it. No one pays attention. And hell, even later on when Laurie's running from Michael, and she runs next door to to help me, please help me. You see someone look through the curtains, and then they go back and turn the light off. It's like they're just plain dumb. They don't want to have anything to do with this.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if maybe they're trying to say something like with that, but that was another thing that always stands out to me. Like I don't think about that like right off the top of my head, but when I'm watching, that's actually one of the creepiest things because again, you're in like a large neighborhood. There's lots of houses, lots of people populated and stuff. So you think, okay, I'm outside. It's late at night. There's not people around, but if I start screaming, yelling, knocking on doors, someone is bound to help. But then, just that idea of people probably just don't want to get involved. They hear screaming, they think it might just be some crazy person. They just don't care. They'd rather play it, and also like terrifying.
Yeah, they want to play it safe in their own little world rather than get involved. It's a really sad little moment in that, but it hits and it plays true, unfortunately. But that entire last chase sequence is fantastic. She stabs Michael with a fire iron, the coat hanger from the closet. And of course, I referenced wrestling earlier. I should probably mention that when Michael sits up behind her, I mean, that was what The Undertaker, he took that and did that as he sit up during the wrestling matches, and that's where he got that from.
Like, isn't like, I don't want to like downplay wrestling or anything.
Oh, sure.
Like it's I don't watch it often, but when I do watch it, I do have a good time. But like, isn't like most stuff in wrestling just like gimmicks stolen from like other things like movies or comic books? A lot
of them. I feel like less so now, but I think in the 80s and 90s there was a lot of thieving. Sting basically took the Crow and just did that for like a long time. Like that was his thing. Undertaker. It's funny though because Undertaker's brother Kane showed up later, and he was actually a lot more like Michael Myers. Even though Undertaker always used the setup, but Kane actually had the mask and had the tilt and all that, and that was kind of the idea. But yeah, that's fun. It's just fun and gimmicky. I mean, I don't really watch it that much anymore. I dip back in and out depending if good things are happening, but it's kind of tedious and painful a lot of the time, to be honest. The writing's pretty poor.
It seems like a lot to follow. But I don't know, but I mean, again though, like I don't watch it often, but whenever I do, because I have a lot of friends that like it, so every now and again they'll be like, oh, let's go to see this thing or come over and watch this. It is always fun, but and another thing I love in this is talking about like he gets stabbed with a coat hanger and stuff. Like I love that he can be hurt, but like he never really like shows it, like never like makes a sound. It's not like there's like this big scream or something. Again, it's just that kind of like stoic.
He does react though, like when he gets stabbed with the coat, he does sort of like react as if he's blind and then he falls down, like when she stabs him. Like I like that he does feel like he can be hurt to a point, although he keeps getting back up. Of course, is the thing. So no, I like that a lot. But like, yeah, so many great horror scenes. I love how it ends when he looks over the balcony and it was the boogeyman, blah blah. But it cuts to all the locations that he's been, and you just hear the breathing before it cuts to the title at the end again. In fact, one of the shots is, again, go back to the start of the chase when he's standing at the top of the staircase before he comes down. Again, there's so many shots in this that I can screenshot and just use as a wallpaper if I feel like it.
Oh yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful filmmaking. And then, of course, you've got the Steadicam. We haven't even mentioned that yet. That a lot of it is long, uninterrupted shots, or at least if it is interrupted, it's like cutting between two Steadicam shots. The one that always sticks out to me is when she's walking towards the house before she finds the bodies, and it's basically just the Steadicam aiming at her as it's going backwards, and then the one behind her shoulder going towards the house, or actually not even behind the shoulder. It's just a POV, I think. Yeah. One of the little touches that I've noticed in recent viewings that I really like is that when she's walking towards the house, you see her shadow appear in the house front door first before she walks into frame, and it's just a simple little thing, but it's just one of those little details that now I notice and really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I don't think anyone else really could have done this movie other than Carpenter. He's just so good at like what he does, and he's so like, I mean, I don't know if it just comes naturally to him or if he's just really like overly meticulous, but like everything just feels like like so thought out and well done. It's really impressive. It's
arguably his best films are the simplest ones.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This, The Thing, Assault on Precinct 13, like when it gets, and obviously he's got other fun movies, but they're definitely a bit more cheesy, right? Like you don't watch Big Trouble in Little China or The Fog and don't think this is a little bit cheesy. They're still fun, they're still well made, but his best films tend to be the really simple ones in terms of premise. So that's where I get. I love Halloween. I mean, if this isn't clear, Halloween is like maybe my favorite horror film. It is the pinnacle. It is the masterpiece to which I measure most other horror movies to. I love its simplicity. I love how it just treats the presence of the killer, the presence of the shape, as this foreboding like force of nature who is just coming no matter what. Like, I always go back to how I think the growing up loving the Terminator movies is actually kind of what my gateway to horror was, because the Terminator in the first one is very much kind of a horror movie villain. He's kind of a slasher villain in a lot of ways. And I think that leads to, and I think Terminator 1 and 2 are masterpieces as well, but for more science fiction reasons than horror. But although the first one I think does kind of work as a horror movie in a lot of ways. So it's interesting. There's got some facets there that I really like.
Yeah.
And you can.
And
yeah, there you go.
I mean, yeah, just like for me, it's like I've said before, it's not my favorite horror movie, but just kind of in terms of, because of the stuff I like, I tend to go for more like supernatural stuff. Like slashers aren't my favorite subgenre, but this is one where it's impossible to deny like the just like the master piece of filmmaking that it is.
It's so well crafted. Like you say, everything feels very meticulous in how it's executed. The pacing of the scenes, the build up of suspense. Like I say, come back to walking to the house. But it's in real time almost. At least it feels that way as she's walking slowly up to the house and into the house and discovering where things are. And I mean, that moment to me, that walk across the street is that is the start moment of the rest of the movie. If that makes any sense, like the final sequence in real time starts with that walk. And from then on, it's just everything takes place kind of, and obviously it doesn't really take place in real time from then on. I'm sure when the kids run out, you kind of cut to them, and it's not quite exactly real time. And not sure, but in terms of the adrenaline of the momentum of the plot, in terms of following things, like nothing feels like it ever cuts to like a new idea or whatever. It's just following on. If I'm going to be critical, I'll say it takes Loomis a while to notice that car sitting there. The Smiths Grove hospital car. Took him a while.
I mean, yeah, it's like anything. Like it's like there's even like your most favorite movie, you can always find like little nitpicks here and there.
Oh yeah, as nitpicks go, that is like so minor. It's just this time I was like, wait a minute, that's just sitting across the road from him the entire time he was sitting at the Myers house. Like he could have noticed that earlier. Actually, speaking of that him being at the Myers house, I actually really like the scene where he scares the kids away. I like it for two reasons. One, he's doing it because he wants them to be safe. You know, don't go in there because Michael might show up. But two, he kind of has fun with it. He's got a smirk in his face. He does a little creepy voice. And it's like, you know what? For a character who, for most of the film, is constantly just like, oh, doom, gloom, like, you know, the evil's coming. I like this little moment because it feels very human. It's like, no, he's actually a person behind all that. He's like, sure, what we see of him in this movie is 99% just Michael's evil and we have to stop him because he's going to kill people. But that one little moment's like, no, he's actually a person with a sense of humor.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Again, it just goes back to the just really treating the characters well and like with respect and stuff. And that's a nice little touch that you're okay. Yeah, he's a person. He's not just this like doomsayer. He has he can get little enjoyment from life.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. So. What have we not talked about, Timmy? We talked about music, we talked about cinematography, talked about pacing, talked about the three main characters that are worth talking about, themes. I think we've covered it, basically, is what I'm saying. But
no, I mean, sometimes it's like, especially like with these classic movies, sometimes it's even like harder to talk about than some random like cheesy 80s movies, because it's just like, I mean, it's great. And
do you know what I've noticed?
What is there to say?
When it's a movie like this that's really good and it's one that we know so well, I feel like we talk about it differently, because normally we talk through the plot. What's the plot of the movie and what weird things happen along the way. We didn't do that with this. We said, no, let's talk about Laurie and just talk us about Laurie and how her character works. Let's talk about Loomis, how his character works. And we just kind of went through subjects almost as part of the movie, because I feel like it's weird to sit and say, well, okay, so Michael Myers murders his big sister, and then he comes back 15 years later, and he's kind of stalking these three teenage girls, mainly Laurie, and then because ultimately after the introductions and their walk home, it's like, okay, then it's time for Annie to pick her up and go to the house to babysit Tommy, and then from there, that's the whole movie. Like, Michael shows up, he kills one person here, one person there, and off we go. It's really simple. I think the simplicity is partly why it's so damn good. And I laugh because one of the things I like so much about Halloween 4 is I like the idea that in Halloween 4 they know he's coming and they know what sort of the threat is, whereas in this one Loomis is having a hard time convincing the sheriff. And one of the things that Loomis says in this is he says, oh no, don't put it on the news because they'll see you in every street corner and you'll have such a hard time figuring out who's who. That happens in Halloween 4. I actually, for all the shit I'm giving the remake for like taking like simple little moments and lines and then blowing them out of proportion, I actually really like that Halloween 4 takes that line and says, no, let's do that, because this time they will all know who he is and we will get angry mobs with guns hunting him down. So I kind of liked how they took that and did something with it in the fourth one. But
that's fair. Yeah, I mean, there's like, you watch a movie like this and it's kind of like, there's no way that, like, even if when you saw this in was it 78 it came out?
Yeah,
like you can even tell them that like there's going to be sequels to this, and like there's like a lot to mine just from this first movie alone, like that I feel like you can do stuff with. It's it's cool that they explored some of that stuff.
It's good. So Halloween is a damn masterpiece, and the remakes are an abomination to everyone in existence, especially the shape. And could we have a genuinely fantastic sequel next week? We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm very interested, especially like when it was coming out. I don't know what Rob Zombie was saying about the original, but I can see him kind of being like, oh, the original's good, but this is going to be our take and blah blah blah. What I love about all this stuff leading up to the new one is that the filmmakers, whether or not that they're making a good film, they get the respect of the original, and they do have like a love and understand what makes it so great. So I mean, who knows if that'll translate into a good movie? I have my hopes pretty high up, but even if it's not good, like at least they understand like.
And obviously John Carpenter's doing the music, he's scoring it, and he was one of the producers. He's had a hand in what the plot is. What I'm hoping for, pretty simply, is just a good suspenseful horror movie. I want him in the background of scenes. I want him, stalking. I want, that stuff. Laurie, like, I don't know what I even want from like crazy old Sarah Connor style Laurie in this. Like, do I want her to be like completely like, she's been waiting all this time to kill him, or do or is she just like going to be aware of it because she knows to look out for that stuff? I don't know. Like, there's elements there to play with and see what they do with, and yeah.
I wanted just to get a revenge from Resurrection.
That's been wiped from history, Tim. It doesn't exist anymore. This is ignoring every single sequel. This is a direct sequel to Halloween 1 and nothing else. So, yeah. So look forward to next week. I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to seeing this new film. We're recording this in advance. This is actually at the start of September as we record this. But when this goes up, it'll be a week until a review, give or take, of Halloween 2018. So,
yeah.
Exciting. It's kind of fun. It's fun to go back to this one right before the new one, actually, because it's a direct sequel to this one, just to be fresh as possible on it.
Yeah, very excited. We shall see.
All right, Tim, I suppose for the sake of format, sticking to the format, we should rate the movie. So, what are you rating Halloween, Timmy?
I could be wrong. I think the first time we reviewed it, I think I gave it like a 9 or a 9.5, and I think my reasoning was just that, you know, it's great and it's a masterpiece, but just like, you know, in the end, it wasn't, you know, my all-time favorite horror movie or whatever. But I think I'll bump that up, and I'll give it a straight 10. And, you know, it definitely, even though it's not, again, you know, not my all-time favorite horror movie or anything, it is still a masterpiece, and, you know, it deserves, you know, that the credit and that.
Do you know what I love about this? Is that I feel like this means that you have learned something from me. And the time during this show, I have improved your existence because now you're rating Halloween with the correct score. That is touching to me, Timmy. I feel I'm proud. I have never been more proud of you than this moment right now. Halloween is a 10 out of 10. Goddamn right it is.
It'll be interesting, you know, in a couple of years when we redo The Boy, and you'll finally give it the correct score.
Yeah, I'm not watching The Boy again.
It deserves.
I'm not watching The Boy again. Shut up. So that has been Halloween. A bit of a revisit of Halloween. Now that we're better at this because the first one wasn't very good. Let's be honest. So that is Halloween. So let us know what you think of Halloween. Let us know if you're looking forward to the new one. Of course, you can support the show and the channel and everything we do here. And if you're feeling especially generous because, you know, we've been doing so many episodes in October and celebrating the month of Halloween, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. In fact, I can get my little on-screen display here ready to go. Let's transition. Oh, look at that. It's so smooth. It'd be even smoother if I just remembered to set it up and then not talk about it as I'm doing it. But yeah, so you can get us on Patreon at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You get to vote on a movie once per month for streams, and you get some other stuff early and whatnot. And you can get us on Twitter at Screams Midnight, as well as myself at Wibble89. Tim, where can they find you on Twitter?
At Tim Vargulish.
There you go, look at that. So yeah, check out that stuff. You can of course support us in other ways. You can watch the ads on YouTube. You can like, subscribe, rate us on the iTunes or your podcast app of choice, and so on and so forth. But we love you loads, and that is us. That is Halloween. So 1 week when this goes up to the new Halloween film. The way I'm scheduling this is so that you're getting a Halloween movie every weekend in October. So. But yeah, so thank you very much. We'll see you again next time. Keep watching scary movies. Happy October. Happy Halloween. We'll see you next time, guys.